Hey, good
Hey,
morning, everyone. Hi,
good morning,
Roman.
Katie.
Hi,
Good morning.
Gaytan.
Good morning, Roman.
How you
Good
guys
morning.
doing?
Yeah.
Doing okay. I want to give a disclaimer here because Roman said he was going to say that I was from outer space because I have oxygen on.
Yeah. Many
So I
of us
just,
know that.
yeah, just want to give a disclaimer. My oxygen levels are dangerously low again, and I'm not feeling all that good. So today the guys are going to do the show, and so I have no other choice. I have to wear my oxygen on the show. So kind of disregard it, okay?
Okay.
And
Great.
today's show is about uh, how. What are you laughing at?
Because you said the guy is going to take the show over and then you
And then
start talking like right
oh
away.
yeah,
Love it, Katie. Keep going.
okay, you guys go ahead.
You are interesting to listen to.
Go ahead.
Okay. There's a lot of fostering going on in the COVID 19 era. And one of the question I have is what qualifies someone, and this question is for Roman, to be a foster parent for Doug?
Okay. Um, Take it with a grain of salt. That's my personal opinion. Okay.
That's why we're asking.
Right. So I feel the first qualification to taking a foster cat or dog is you love animals. Number one and important. The next one is your family is on the same page with what you want to do. Because if you have a family more than yourself, then all these people have to be part of that
Mhm.
aspect and foster the dog. Fostering is not a parking lot. It's a healing process. The dog is coming from a stress situation, coming into your home, starts doing a healing process, and you have to be supervising that healing process and helping that dog going or the cat going through this healing process. And then at some point, we have to prepare that pet to be able to be adopted. So we
Mhm.
want to make it better, not getting worse. So we have to have some definitely an empathetic factor to being capable of fostering. So yeah, I would say number two, number three would be being an empath and understanding the animal's needs. Then I would definitely add experience and knowledge about that species that you want to foster. A basic understanding of the species' natural needs of exercise, social interactions, and it applies to all the animals. I'm not putting down details now, it would be a long list, but understanding the basic needs of animals. Then we have to have the environmental for that animal to come in. So theoretically, if I want to foster a tiger, I'm just saying an example, so we magnify it a little bit. I will not be do that if I have a one bedroom apartment. So we have to have the environmental setting,
Mhm.
a place for that animal to rest, a place for that animal to exercise, a space for that animal to feel safe and comfortable. And it should not minimize your living area yourself. Like if you have five people in your home and the dog comes in or the cat comes in and those people don't have access to certain rooms, that would be a problem. Um, and then we have to have the financial coverage to be able to treat those animals. We have to offer food, we have to offer medical care. So that usually the rescue or the shelter takes over of that. But if that's not the case, because we foster for a friend, we foster for a relative who is in need, we need to have that in mind that this animal eventually need emergency care, and we have to have money aside. So if I would have a dog in foster care, I have basically four dogs on my own that I had fostered at some point. That would be about $1,000 a dog. That can happen at any time. So heartworm, positive, needs treatment. An
Mhm.
injury, a TLC, um, a physical injury needs a treatment. You're not need like more than $250 just to go to the vet, putting some X-rays, get some medication, go home and do treatment, right? Then we have to be aware that I have to have the physical ability to care for that dog. So if I'm disabled to a certain range that I will not be able to take my dog out for a walk, I need support. So somebody else has to do it for me. If I'm a caretaker of a person who I am disabled and the other person is not, and this dog is used to have certain exercise a day, I love the dog. He can stay in my house, but I will not give him that exercise. I will have a problem. So I need a backup plan.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, and I think that makes it totally qualified for a dog or a pet that doesn't have behavior issues that you cannot handle.
Hmm.
So that would be the third, the last part that I say, get an animal that you can handle from a behaviors perspective. So definitely there should be a factor of behavior assessment of any species you take in your home that is
Hmm.
assessed before you take it home. So you're not exposing your family, your children, your pets, or other animals in your care in danger of being hurt.
Yeah. So if
Okay,
you're Katigo,
I just had a question here now. So right now we see all these people that are coming forward and they want to foster a dog, and that's because they're sitting at home alone. They're not at work, they're not going out, and they're not doing their activities, they're not taking the kids all around. So they want this fuzzy companion with them right now. And the fear is that once they go back to work, the kids go back to school and everything, what happens to the dog?
Yep.
So even though they fostered them, are we going to see this big influx of dogs being returned to the shelters? And that's what we don't want to see. We don't
I
want to
I
see that.
I've been in a couple of groups, which are most of them large breeds or um, livestock guardian breeds. I think about 45, 60,000 people total, if I kind of calculate the numbers. And I see already a tendency where people freaking out. They have stressors. The dogs get stressed. The life is changed totally. And all of a sudden that will stop. We will see a lot of separation anxiety. We will see a lot of destructive behaviors. We will see a lot of frustration behaviors coming with those dogs. And I've seen already people who cannot handle their own stress and surrender the dog to friends and family already. And those dogs will end up at some point back in the circle of rescue or shelters because this family, the dog just being adopted to, they have to go to work. And the dog hasn't settled in yet. And then what do we put the dog now? Well, he's just chewing on the carpet. He's getting in the crate. Well, from
mhm,
the crate, the dog wants to get out because he's not used to being in the crate because the previous home he was just fine. And all of a sudden, we see a beginning of an abuse. I call it that way because we force the dog to do something that he's not comfortable with because we need to do our life too. And so we do things we don't know about correctly, which the dog perceives as
Mhm.
such. So
mhm.
that's a very sensitive matter, and we have to understand that is happening a trauma there with those animals in these situations. And I'm trying as much as possible to educate on my side and make people aware of, like, hey, watch out here. Separation anxiety starts with you right now, and it will
Mhm.
show up or not depending on you how you prepare the whole things, right?
Yeah. So we're just come back to what you were saying. Let's say I'm at home, I'm working from home. I receive a notice that I will never return to work because my employer just emailed me that, okay, you're good. You can stay at home and work from home. I think I qualify. I think I have the space. I think my wife is willing to have a dog in the house. And I think I can take care of the dog. I remember this saying from a friend that if your dog is overweight, is because you don't do enough exercise.
That's
So,
true.
so let's say I qualify for fostering a dog. What should I expect? Is there a transition period? Is that an adaptation, a time to
Yeah.
between the dog and us to establish relationship? What do
From
you call that part?
from my experience, and what generally is out there, we see that we have a term is called decompression. I It's used very often. I really don't agree with that term because it doesn't show the reality of it. So the compression comes basically from diving, where we are under pressure and
Hmm.
we go up too quickly. Then the oxygen will kind of bubbleize in the blood and we're going to die. What happens with animals? I see the better term would be imprinting.
Hmm.
So the imprint um, is the better term because the dog, from his personal experience, being born and going through these several stages of experiences until a certain amount of weeks. He's going through different stages, and the way these stages are programmed through his experience is how the dog will continue perceiving new events based on that experience. So, a dog, for example, who is born in a factory environment, like breeding factories, he is imprinting basically is just a crate, loud noises and all these things. And so he's being born into stress, and so he lives into stress, and he lives in that constant stress environment. A dog who's born from a regular breeder who knows his stuff, and he's fair treating his animals, the dog will have a different experience through that imprint period. So we have relationships building, we play with litter mates, we have the social experiences. It is a healthy emotional experience throughout this important imprint state. So when the dog moves from one house to the other, so the dog is being adopted, he's going through the same experience circle. What do I do? How do I feel safe? How do I find safety? How do I
Mhm.
attach relationships? Is it a friend? Is it a family? Is it a stranger? Is it a danger? What is it? And so if the dog doesn't have that experience, it will backfire. So if I take in a dog, I have to recognize, does my dog have these social emotional experiences? Does he know what to do? Does he have these basic rules? And
Mhm.
if he doesn't, I have to take a different approach. I cannot have parties coming in the first day the dog arrives. So I need an assessment, an observation period. So from my experience, that imprint period is about 3 to 4 weeks, but it's not really a time factor, but it's a sequence of event factors. So don't, it's not a number. I see this post coming up around where we say 3 3 3, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. It's not correct. It depends on the dog in particular. We cannot just generalizing that. We cannot just take it as a fact. So we have a period where the dog is, and you can pull up that slide so people can better observe. That's exactly. So we have to establish trust and be supportive. That dog see us then as a secure attachment relationship and start bonding with us. That bond is the base of how the dog perceives the information he will get. For example, start teaching the dog a family code of conduct. And I know it sounds weird because we use that only with children, but if the dog doesn't know what we do when we have a meal, what do we do if we have a visitor? Can I do this? Can I do that? If you don't set up those rules, the dog will not behave. So it's not just about obedience, it's about morals and ethics. And
Mhm.
so if the dog doesn't have this secure attachment relationship, he will not be able to perceive that information from his safe source that he trusts. And then we see that after we have this family code of conduct, then we can start building different complex jobs around that aspect. For example, the dog can take out for a walk and, oh, that wasn't me, right?
Uh-oh, I turned off my phone, but
That's
it's
fine.
not.
So
Sorry.
we see that once that aspect is cleared and the family code of conduct is set, we see then the dog will start understanding his tasks that he has to do that are associated with the family he's bonded to. So
Mhm.
the dog will not just do things for treats or for petting. He does it because that's what he does for his family. So especially carnivores that live in a home environment, they do have family systems, and they really adapt very well in the family system if we create that foundation from a secure attachment base, from my experience. And that will take in the dog as education and then generalize that information in that imprint period, and then it becomes just a fact. So
Mhm.
once you're consistent for 4 or 5 weeks and the dog goes through this experience circle, then that is being taken in as consistent, and that then become a law. That's what we do. If we meet people, we sit, we get a treat, and we're happy about that. Or if I have mealtime, I'm being quiet, calm, because that's what we do. We're family, right?
Mhm.
And that I see is the most important thing that a foster home can offer that a shelter cannot. And that's why the healing process starts when the dog goes into a foster care, which I think it's an important fact in no kill rescue idea,
Mhm. Mhm.
is to help the dog goes into that healing process and exits there into a safe home that is already prepared and the dog knows what to do.
In going into the shelter and looking at different dog, what are the factor that will influence the behavior of the dog before any intervention? Like some of the fact you have that on your web page, and I was looking at that. I was quite interested.
Well, we have to recognize that any animal, living being, has two basic factors that affect his life:
Hmm.
genetics and environmental factors. It doesn't matter where you are, where you live. You can have siblings. They can 100% similar, which is not existing. But if I would have a sibling that's the same age, same gender, same family, we'll grow up together, at some point we make different decisions. And that makes it already different. So even if we are completely the same species, same environment, same family, the way the environment affects us and a little bit of a genetic difference will make the different pathways of thinking.
Mhm.
So if a dog comes to the shelter, we have all these interesting things that happen that affect us. So if we go down and look more in the list, and I don't want to miss anything, we see, for example, here we go. I have that chart. I don't want to miss that. We have the dog feeling confident in himself to survive that shelter. We need the dog to start learning how to trust, a dog who has knowledge, a dog who's healthy and has nutritional healthy intake, a dog who's healthy, a dog who has trauma or not, and a dog who has a job description or not. These are all factors that affect his staying in that shelter. And that's why I think a dog should not stay in the shelter longer than necessary, because it's not a prison system. The dog should not be there for punishment. The dog should come in there as evaluation. He should come in there of establishing if that dog is being lost and there's an owner attached to that. In that case, we have to find the owner. So it's kind of like an emergency room. The shelter should be an emergency room. Dog goes in, health check, make sure he belongs to someone, send him back, not making it worse as it already came into. The dog has no clue how I ended up in there. He thinks the reason why he ends up there because he wasn't good enough. So we have emotional factors that kick in as soon as the dog ends up in that stress environment. And that is where we have to be very careful that we're not supporting trauma to become worse in that system. And then all of a sudden we say dogs get kennel crazy, dog starts getting aggressive, dog gets stressed, he starts chewing himself up the leash to your hand, and then we put him down because he's an aggressive dog.
That's right.
It's the system that caused that. The dogs are not aggressive in species unless they have a genetic issue or they have a brain trauma or medical condition that caused them to be not in control of their behavior.
So
Yeah.
it makes sense then to have a rethinking or do a paradigm shift on how we currently view a shelter. Possibly what we can be thinking is, like you just said, that's like the place to go to begin with. That's like the halfway house. They go in there, and then we get a foster. But I think, like we're talking about today, fosters don't really know what they're getting into when they foster a dog. So they have to know they've got to make a commitment.
Yeah.
They've got to be there. They've got to be accountable. They also have to be able to do some reporting. And even more so, they need to let other people know, so the dog can be adopted, what the personality is of this dog.
Right.
What are the characteristics? What do they like? What don't they like? Because the chances of a dog being adopted from a foster are incredibly higher. The percentage is incredibly higher from a foster than it is from a shelter.
Right.
So it makes sense to have foster-based adoptions.
Absolutely.
And only have the shelter as the beginning location. That's where you go pick up the dog. And that's what it hasn't been. It's been vice versa.
Right.
It's been difficult to get a foster to come forward. And then once they get the dog, they don't know what to do with them, or they find that the dog doesn't fit. So possibly if we can help to be responsible, to help people to become good foster parents and be part of a system that they can relate with other foster parents, then that would be a good way to be thinking about it. So that's what we want to do, folks. We want to help people, help those shelters to create a good, strong foster system. And they can do it virtually now, where they can show the foster dogs. We did that last week. By the way, Bo has been adopted.
Good. Yay.
Finally.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Great.
So, hey, we
Excellent.
got, let's see here now. Lisa's here. She needs a calm older brother or sister. And is it better to foster a puppy or a little older dog? Good question, Dale. Roman, do you think it's better to foster a puppy or an older dog?
Yeah. Okay.
Both.
Do we have the
What is
choice?
it better to have a big car or a small car? Now, it depends on your abilities. So I think a person who's working all day long and there's nobody at home most of the day, he cannot have puppies to start with. A puppy to start with has to go out every 3 hours. Start with an
Right.
hour and then 2 hours, 3 hours. You have to kind of start creating puppy training the dog. And you cannot just leave the house for the next 7 hours. The dog has to eat as a puppy between 0 and 4 months old
Mhm.
4 times a day. Who's going to feed the dog twice a day when you're gone? Right?
Hmm.
And then you have to socialize. The puppy growing up every day is kind of missing a year in school. I'm giving that a dimension because these
Yeah.
dogs are learning from environmental triggers all the time. The way you open the door, the washing machine, the way you clean dishes, the food dropping from the babies, all these things are experiences the dog just adds up. Is a blank space in there, and this information comes in. That's how animals learn.
Mhm.
So if you miss that part for a week or two, you end up with a dog who has no clue what you're talking about,
Hmm.
especially in this critical period between 8 weeks, basically 6 weeks, and 14 weeks, where the genetics are basically start being switched and these breed traits coming out in a certain way. And we miss that aspect for a dog who has high prey drive to not
Mhm.
expose him to chickens, birds, and babies running around because that switch will be on and it will be hard to switch it off. So most people have no clue about that. Nobody talks about that. Everybody
Mhm.
says, how do I fix a dog who's biting me? How old is he? 10 weeks. Well, avoid your hands. Well, I need to socialize him. But hold on.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that goes right back to the point about how do you foster a dog? You think that it's the same thing. You got to keep in the back of your mind, if you're not going to keep this dog or become a foster failure like I always am, then you've got to have this dog. You got to understand that nobody is going to want to foster that dog unless they feel that the dog is going to be a good dog. And it's
Mhm.
you as the foster that has the opportunity and the responsibility to help that dog to continue to mature and grow and
Right, right.
experience all the wonderful things about being a dog.
That goes with the question of, you're at the foster, you look at several dog. What are the criteria? What will trigger you to select the proper dog?
Sorry, can you have to repeat that question?
Yes,
It broke up.
I'm. Let's say I pretend I qualify. I'm going to the foster, to the shelter. I mean, and there's several dogs there. Some are very active. Some are sleeping or in the back of the cage. Some are barking. So, what will be for me a criteria to choose a dog?
I don't think you can choose from that criteria.
Okay, that's a
Um,
good answer.
it's kind of like picking a car based on license plates.
Yeah, yeah,
You,
right.
you need
You
to
just
drive it.
you would know, Gaetan. You would know who you would
I
want to
feel I
foster.
feel a good way to approach that is to have a shelter system or
Hmm.
a rescue system that gives you that opportunity to test drive the dog a weekend. There are many shelters who have that program. So you basically have the dog over the weekend, see how
Okay.
you get along with, because the dog in a shelter environment exposed to all those stressors will behave differently than in your home that is calm. A
Hmm.
calm dog in the shelter who is eventually shut down will open up in your home and be kind of like, holy bark, he's taking over my house. And another dog who is barking, yelling, and screaming in the shelter and jumps against the fence, he will sleep all day long for that weekend. You see? So their environmental factors make a huge impact, scientifically speaking,
Hmm.
projecting from children that we know that. And children and dogs are pretty much at the same level to 5 years old of a child, emotionally and developmental stage.
Hmm.
We see that 42% are genetic factors and 58% are environmental factors, which is
Okay.
100% our home in that case. And I think we should be conscious about that. So I would take the dog out in a special room, nice and quiet, sit with one of the dog's caretakers who is comfortable with, so he has already secure attachment with that person, and introduce him this new opportunity. Start building a new attachment relationship, and that attachment relationship goes into the foster care.
Hmm.
I
Right.
see all the time that fosters are being dropped off from a shelter. travel all the way, being dropped off at the foster, car is gone, and the foster has there a dog he has no clue about. There is no records, there is no knowledge, no behavior assessment. And if the behavior assessment is that, the owner has to go through 5 pages of behavior assessment and try to figure out which one would be applicable right now. And I feel that's what Kathy actually, and I appreciate you for doing that. You give that option of helping people recognize, hey, you can do this online. I mean, I do this in 2009 every day almost, coaching people online. But I see also, because I work with shelters and rescues at the same time, we do foster classes and educate people how to handle that. So you can minimize the exposure of that foster that doesn't have any time left. He's working, taking care of the kids, take care of the dog. Plus, he has to sit every day in a classroom. No, he doesn't need to. He sits down for 2 hours, takes a little bit break while the dog is sleeping, and learn how to do that, and have a copy of that, and can go back to a document and go, what do I do when my dog is not eating well? He has diarrhea. I need to go panicking and go to the vet, kind of stuff.
And Gaetan, that was a very good question, because there's a lot of people when they adopt, or let's say if they adopt a dog and they bring the dog home, if they haven't had the training of what to expect and the expectations and the cost involved and everything regarding a dog, two things will happen. Either the dog will become a poo-poo dog. They don't like the dog because it's not behaving properly, and they blame it on the dog, which is really the humans problem. Or they'll end up ignoring what the dog is trying to tell them, and then they'll pee and poop in the house. The dogs are very, very smart. They catch on very quickly. They train us. If we only paid attention to them, and we knew exactly what they were trying to tell us, just trying to understand. They take the time to try and understand us. So why shouldn't we take the time to try and understand them? So when they are giving us a hint, they go to the door. Don't second guess that. Just assume I want to go outside. So let's go, let's go and give them, do you want to go outside? And if they wiggle and they tell you they want to go, they want to go. So problems that occur with a foster home is, a lot of people think, well, it's just temporary. It's only until they find a home. So the thinking that we would like to see in a foster home is to take that time, become very aware of, look at this dog as a child that you brought in. That's a foster child. You want to learn what the needs are of this dog, so that you can very successfully communicate to somebody that's looking to adopt that dog, to tell them about what the traits are. The things that I don't like when you go to a shelter are, oh, they're good, they like to cuddle, they this. How do they know that? They don't know that. They don't know that they like to cuddle. And you don't get a good description of what the dog's real needs are and what the dog's real personality is unless they're in a foster home. So that's why we really advocate for that. And for somebody that wasn't going to talk a lot, zip.
Your comments are always.
And by the way, my brother has a question that we're going to ask in our Ask Roman section.
Okay.
So we haven't forgot about you, Ron.
Great.
Okay.
So one thing that I see also that I need to mention is, me personally, I was a foster for large breed dogs. I used to have 13 dogs in my care from foster, which I also trained. And shelters have limited funds. Most of them. Imagine that the dog comes in from a shelter environment. The first thing is going to happen, the dog has to go through medical care, from dehydration, from organ failure, to medical conditions on the skin, belly. Thousands of dollars are going out from a rescue every day, just getting that dog out of the shelter, because the shelter doesn't have the money and the capacity to examine all dogs and treat them, because maybe it belongs to somebody who's supposed to do that anyway. It's always be secure the dog is surviving in that shelter. That's the whole everything they do there. Some shelters are better, some shelters have not the funds either. Now, if the dog goes into foster care, I will be the first one who will not be enough with the low quality food. I'm gonna buy food that's better, that I consider better food than what I get from a shelter. And what's gonna happen next is I'm gonna buy healthy treats, because I'm not okay with no treats. And I got toys and a leash and a collar, and all of a sudden I'm gonna spend more money than on my own dogs because this dog, he needs help, right? You're not avoiding that. So we know that rescues sometimes take advantage of that,
Mhm.
and we want to point out you're not supporting the foster that already is at the edge on his expenses, using his empathy to take advantage of. And I'm not saying that there are few rescues but it's a problem that we have to look for. And then we
Mhm.
have another factor that people foster fail because they're afraid to say the dog's behavior, because they think they cannot handle the dog's behavior. The foster rescue will take the dog away, or the shelter will take the dog away, and they will put him to sleep. So I zip it, I adopt the dog, and deal with it later. But I'm
Mhm.
Hey,
losing.
could we clarify foster failure here? Because when I was saying foster failure, what
I
I
know.
meant is that what I meant was
Thanks
that
for clarifying.
I ended up keeping the dog. I didn't get a foster, and that was my Charlie.
Right.
Uh-huh.
I do think it's a great thing to do once you know how to handle dogs. You can fit lots of dogs. Like
Yeah.
I remember having a client who had three greyhounds, and I said, well, compare on your square footage. You have 1,400 square foot. You can have every 3 square foot a dog. And she got another two dogs, so she has five great greyhounds, and she's totally doing fine with those because they create kind of a whole family system there.
Mhm.
So it's really no restrictions how many dogs you have, but I would consider, honestly, from my experience, you need at least, at least to consider
Two.
wellness, 20 minutes
Yeah.
care for each dog, personal, personal care, one-on-one per dog per day.
Yeah.
So if you have 10 dogs, that's 200 minutes, 100% dedication on each,
Yeah.
on all the dogs. Don't take more than you can handle.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
Hey, we got Kelly here. Kelly, yeah, you must have missed it. We talked about that. Bo got adopted, and let me see. Bo got a wonderful foster, and they want to adopt, and now named him Captain. So yay for Bo! Yeah, thanks, Kelly.
Excellent.
Captain Bo.
Captain Bo.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Okay, Gaetan, do you have more questions for
No,
Roman?
I'm educated now.
Okay, well, I
No, you're
wanted to
not.
know about this imprinting.
Oh, yeah. Let's zoom in a little bit.
Okay,
So when we look into, oops,
what do you want?
no, I
Up more?
was, yeah, that would be great so people can see better.
More?
So no, that's fine. So I think the first thing that can happen with imprinting is that it starts with what we call the compression, but in fact, as the dog comes into the care, he starts basically from scratch, understanding his environment, where he's at, what he's doing, what the routines are, what the schedule is. So the more schedule there is, the more consistency there is, the better for those animals is to feel comfortable that everything is being provided for. Irregularities, um, not consistency, lead usually to separation anxiety and anxiety in general. Okay, so that's an important to start with. And for example, a good caregiver would be easily to be identified by the dog if food is involved, if care is involved, if nurturing is involved, and how the communication level is between the dogs and the person.
I
Now,
have a
sometimes
question.
we have dogs that have no communication skills because they've never been in a human, family environment. They've been chained outside. They came up from a shelter full. They were born in the shelters. They're already 300 days in that shelter. They don't have these family interactions, so they don't know about that. So we have to be very patient about that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about
Yes,
consistency. When you use the word consistency, are you referring to doing the same thing at the same time,
yes.
or the
A
same
schedule, having
a
a schedule.
schedule?
What
Okay.
time we eat, what time we go for walks, and then once we have that schedule, then we loosen up a little bit. I had the opportunity through my online sessions to work with a person who was working in a prison as a guard, And we're talking about how do those people feel who come into that into this prison system. How do you handle those people? And they say the first thing they do is they adapt. They need to adapt in this slash system, and they try to find a secure attachment, somebody they can trust, somebody who walks them through, the rules there, and the gangs who are playing role there. So he doesn't want to get hurt. He needs to fit in at some point. And so they go through the same process. So we can learn from our, system, and
Mhm.
and on the other way, we can learn also from animal systems to help our systems. So we need to open up a little bit here and observe that.
Okay, good.
And then the next thing that's happened is also imprint with non-family members. So once the dog creates his family safe environment, the dog should be start recognizing that there are non-family members that he can imprint to.
Mhm.
In that case, once the puppy recognizes his mother, now he recognizes his siblings, and then he's recognized his elder siblings as he's growing up in that environment. So we see we have a similarity here. So from an internal close family system into the external family system. And then we have the imprinting of environmental factors. For example, once the puppy gets older in his real life, he starts being more aware of the leaves, the wood sticks in his environment, birds and other animals in his environment. So these will be environmental factors that affects that dog as a puppy. While
Mhm.
he's coming into your home, the same imprint factor comes in, and the dog learns. I was like, okay, now that I have my family, now that I know about other parts than my family, I have also have family dangers outside in my environment. How do I react to a doorbell? How do I react to a door knocking? How do I react to a person coming up to me and give me a treat? And then we have imprinting of family code of conduct. How do we behave socially in
Mhm.
a general environment? Do we just go for it, attack and chase everything that it is? And what if I end up with a snake? Oops, that will be killing me. So
Mhm.
that's why it's also important that all these things happen basically at the same time later when the dog is more adult. And we see that those have to be offered to the animal that has never been exposed to them. So we see that we have to add information to that aspect if the dog hasn't been there.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Driving a car, going to the vet visit, going to a dog park. Um, and I highly recommend people to not test the dogs in the dog park that they just got 5 hours ago. See how he does with dogs before I bring him home. I will
Yeah, right.
see this all the
Oy,
time.
oy, oy. Yeah. A lot of people do that, which that's a crazy thing to do. And the other thing too, they expect that the dog is going to be perfect, right from
Expectations is a big thing.
yeah,
People expect too much. Well,
yeah,
I expect the perfect dog that fits my family, and then I project that to the foster who is being
yeah,
abused, comes from a domestic
yeah,
violence case, being from a raid, and he would kill for breakfast because that's
right.
what he thought he should do. He doesn't know.
Well, you know what happens a lot though too, especially not only with adoptions but with fosters. The kids aren't given the rules. They're not told what they can and cannot do. So all of a sudden, they bring this foster home or a dog, and the foster may feel that they should be. Uh, that the dog should be perfect with them. What they don't know is that you don't pull on the tail, you don't pull on the fur, you don't pull on their mouth, you don't pull on their noses. And then if the dog does snap, then immediately the dog is a no good dog, and they're just going to end with that. So
Mhm.
We have the same imprint period with children too. For the child, that is a new thing. He has no experience with that. I cannot
right,
expect from a 5-year-old to have the experience of a 15-year-old, and I cannot expect the child of a 3 years or 2 years to be in control of his emotions and body. Well, if the dog grabs one of his toys, he starts crying and hitting the dog because the dog took that toy. He doesn't have that understanding
hmm,
that what happens in front of him is happening for a reason, and his actions have an effect on his environment. So this is where parenting comes in and says, hey, let me show you how I handle the dog so you can learn from what I do and then recreate it. If I
right.
have the father roughhouse with a dog and then complain about the dog roughhousing with a baby, like, hello.
Right, right. Exactly. Exactly. Hey, now it's time for the Ask Roman. the other day I was Skyping with my brother and sister-in-law, and they have a cute little Snorky named Chloe. And she's a lot. She's a lot. So here's the question. He wants to know, how do you deal with an 18-month-old Shorkie who turns into devil dog most nights for about 5 minutes? We suspect it's a pent-up energy thing, but the dog growls and barks and jumps at us, not even close to behavior that she wants to play. She becomes very aggressive now, and she does the zoomy, she does the whole thing, and it's a routine for her every night, and they don't know how to, and becomes a little bit scary because they think, oh, is she coming at us?
You said already lots of right words, and you kind of got a real description here, Kathy. I mean, you know your stuff. I would point out a few things to start with. A, we have a breed behavior.
Whoops.
So the dog has a functional behavior based on his breed traits. And then we have a certain time of the day where dogs are more active towards the dusk, where dogs get more active. And then we have a functional behavior that says, how do I get my energy out? Oh, that's a great way to do these things. And so we have an emotional condition. The dog sees there's a good way to let out energy and let out that compensation energy. And then we have a response to the environment. People are chasing, people becoming the prey, and the dog is going into a prey drive, and things are perfect. And then we want that to stop from happening. So first of all, I think once we know this time is coming, we should offer the dog an alternative outlet. So I cannot take away something from the dog without having first the alternative. The brain doesn't function that way. So, for example, I would like everybody here to kind of pay attention to you. I want to help you a little bit understanding the concept of showing alternative behaviors and alternative thinking processes. Let's say, for example, I will say a word. I will say 3 times a word, 3 words, and I would like you to see your emotions how come up. So for you guys who are scared of sharks, there's one for you. I'll say the word shark. What comes in emotion up to yourself? How do you feel about that? Most people will say, they will change their face like, oh, teeth and blood and death and all these things. And then they ask him, have you ever been hurt by a shark? Seen a shark? People like, no. Like, how do you know these things? How do you feel emotionally about that you never had experienced with?
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. Then I say the word shark vacuum cleaner. It's not an advertising. Exactly. People laugh just like you because it's a relief. First was the shark and then the vacuum cleaner, and then like ha ha ha, funny, right? And then I say the other word, shark. And then there is a pause, and then they say fish, water, danger. So before it was killing blood and teeth, then it was fun, and then it was water, fish, whatever. Mm-hmm. We see that the brain suddenly has this fork, danger thought, relief thought. And the brain will make like, I'm not going that, oh, we go this way, it's better. So you give the brain a release of not going into a fear state and stay away from that emotional experience and stick to the good emotion. So before I have to give my dog a better positive emotion about how to feel about what I do, before I reduce the access to one that he felt better before. So if chasing people, biting people, and being aggressive is the way to get the energy out, I will give my dog another way to get the energy out. Obedience, body structure, mental stimulation, basically, sorry, lost the word right now.
Changing the mind, yeah.
Enrichments that gives him that relief that is better than doing things that he really doesn't like. Because the dog doesn't like to be in that stress situation. Mm-hmm. And once we have that, then we can reduce the other side, the access to it, and then have the dog being rewarded for doing something that we appreciate. So in that case, after I say the shark vacuum cleaner and you have the other route, I will reward you positively about the shark who is just a fish and lives in the water.
Yeah.
Instead of the fish who's going to kill you and eat you alive. Never seen one, actually. Make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's almost like she knows exactly when they're because there's a routine. My brother sits
Exactly.
down in his chair, my sister-in-law sits down on the sofa, and now she thinks, aha, ta-da,
Right.
it's time for me to start doing my
This
zoomies.
this is the pattern that we talked about. So we
That's
have to
right.
stop the thinking pattern to go in that direction and give him a new direction. So what we do is when one partner is sitting down to the couch, the other partner takes the dog out for a walk.
There you
And
go.
then the
Yeah.
other person comes in, sits on the couch, and the other person takes him out for a personal one-on-one exercise. Maybe start with a leash, maybe go outside in the yard, burn it off.
Yeah.
Then come in and offer the dog something that he really likes. Sometimes when I have foster dogs, and I'm taking here an example, I will have a chew toy, which is not a chew toy, just an example, and share that chew toy with my dog while he's like, oh my God, this is me and him like working with each other while I'm watching my TV, and I'm pet him for doing that, what I appreciate, while he has that experience of getting his stress out, his release, plus getting rewarded simultaneously as he does it. And if I feel overwhelmed and I feel the dog gets overwhelmed with that experience, I have him going to a safe place, which could be a bed, a crate, or another, partition or separation, where he can take his aggression off on a tug toy or a chew toy
Yeah.
that he has that need to kind of modify it or move around that. And once he takes that energy off, then I take him back out again, because some dogs don't cannot handle too much emotion, so they become reactive to that.
Okay, that great answer, great answer. Well, this was
Excellent.
a wonderful show. Thank you very much for being on the show,
Thank you for the question.
Gaetan and Roman. Yeah. I think we should have an Ask Roman every week because that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Okay, everyone, thanks
I
so
agree.
much. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.
One more thing.
Oh yeah.
We have now on YouTube a
Oh
channel. So all the video we have produced in the past, beside, well, all these show live are available on that channel on YouTube. On top of that, we're taking all the video we have produced so far and video we're going to produce in the future and post that on YouTube channel. So that will give you like a bank of information.
Subscribe and
And
yeah.
share.
thank you. Allow, and then for us, if you're kind enough to subscribe, that will help us. And when you subscribe, first, it's free. Second, the only thing you will receive is a note that there's a new video posted. And this week, we start with the series Nardia Pet Behavior and Training session. We went there. We were talking about training. This is the appropriate. So we post the session number 1 yesterday. We post the session number 2 today. We'll post the session number 3 tomorrow. So you have 6 video. They are the base of kindergarten training. It's a base you can look at and make sense out of it. It's very simple, very efficient, and you see the transformation. This was taken over a period of 6 weeks, and you see the transformation from first week to the 7th week, the last week of the series. So these video are coming one by one. We have other video we produce in for the Memorial Weekend. We are going to repost on this channel, on the YouTube channel. Thank you for your service, which is a video I did last year for the same Memorial time. And because of the coronavirus, we cannot go out right now. And as soon as we go out, we have we have 32 production to put together, just video wise. That will be integrated in one of our show and also posted on the YouTube channel. It's called the Dog Connection
show.
on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll put a link in there.
Yeah, please. And I hope I post the video on the right channel, by the way.
Yeah. Well, the reason that we've always had a channel, but we haven't had a Dog Connection show channel.
Okay.
So the other channel that we have it's got a lot of other things in it, and we wanted it to be real simple and clean. So that's why we're making it just the Dog Connection show.
And if you want to help us producing these show, we're not asking for money. Just subscribe on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
That would be of a great help for us.
Yes, it would.
I know that
So,
people want to become the best people for their dogs and the
mhm.
best parents. And I know there's a little bit of resource guarding about that information. It's like, I want to be the best one in my neighborhood kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's okay to share it.
Yeah.
Totally okay.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Share it. Right. Okay, everyone. Thank you
Th-
so much.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
Kathy.
Bye.
Thank you, Roman.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everybody,
Bye.
for watching. Tell your
Bye.
friend.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.